We're at the end of another Black History Month, and I have a dream. Like the incomparable Dr. Martin Luther King so many years ago, I have a dream. I honestly believe that it's time for us to have tough, open, and honest conversations about the things that are keeping us divided, especially when it comes to race. We've all heard it before, the same old deflective statements such as, I don't see color. We all bleed red, and we're all humans. What I've learned is that when someone says these words, they usually mean that they view and treat everyone equally regardless of their race or ethnicity. And while I don't doubt the sincerity of anyone and the intentions of those who've used these words as a person of color, I am a Puerto Rican man. I find the phrase to be problematic and highly insensitive. Because not only can saying I don't see color be culturally insensitive and dismissive, because like it or not, agree with it or not, some of us are and historically have been seen and treated very differently on the basis of the color of our skin. And can I share with you a secret? I am legally colorblind and I can see color. And you can absolutely see color too. You can see when you walk out of the house in the morning that the sky is blue. You can see that the grass is green when you look down. You can turn around and see what color your house is. You know what color shirt you're wearing as you got dressed. You and I can absolutely see color. That means that you and I can also see skin color. So maybe it's time we stop pretending that we all of a sudden cannot see color. What people mean when they say, I don't see color, is an ambiguous way of saying, I don't want to see racism. And somehow we think we're being a great human being by ignoring everyone's skin color. But in actuality, friends, you're not. Sure, at the end of the day, we all bleed red. But if we're honest with ourselves, some of us are bleeding at a faster rate than the rest of us. Some of us are having to bury our sons and our daughters, our nieces, our nephews, and our grandbabies at a much higher rate than others. So yeah, we all bleed red, but let's stop pretending that those with darker skin and non-white features are not bleeding 24/7 while the rest of society is not. Because if you don't see color, then you don't see me. Because basically what you're saying when you say things like that is that you claim to not see skin color. But if that is true, then you don't see the person. You don't see their culture, their struggle, nor their history. So if you take a stance of not seeing color, so as not to allow the color of people's skin to affect how you treat them, to instead see them as human beings, not defined by their race or ethnicity, I commend you for taking such a noble stance. But friends, unfortunately, that perspective ignores the influence of our culture, the influence of the hundreds of years of policies and practices and ideas that have had a direct effect on our biases and our worldviews. You know, not seeing color ultimately originates from an experience of not having to see color. And it rises out of the idea that we have a choice to act and experience the world without consideration of skin color or race. I hate to say it, friends, but sadly, our culture is steeped in racism. And to ignore color is to discount the current racial discrimination found in our country's institutions and systems that affect people directly every single day of their lives. The fact is, we all see color. And not seeing color is simply just pretending. Because it's right there in front of us every time we look at each other. It would be easier if we didn't see it, if we didn't have to deal with it, of course, right? But we can't avoid it. So please take note today that saying I don't see color is not a progressive position on race. If anything, it's denying that racism even exists. And friends, you and I need to be aware that today, denying that race exists is the new racism. Instead, part of my dream is that we need to strike I don't see color from our lexicon and replace those words with something more along the lines of I will no longer stand by while others discriminate against you because of your color. And can I talk to my non-black brothers and sisters for a moment? People of color will not fix this problem alone. We can't. We need all of you as allies. And in order for you to be an ally, there's 2 steps you got to take. The first step is to acknowledge and be aware of the problem. The second step is to not be indifferent when you see the problem. And it's really that simple. And to be sure, I don't mean, listen to me carefully, to suggest that we're going to solve or we can solve the systematic racism so prevalent in our society overnight or even in our lifetime. But if we're going to move the needle on this issue at all, then this is a good place for us to start. Here's where my dream begins, because the larger point was best captured by Angela Davis when she said it like this: it is not enough to be non-racist. We must be anti-racist. So saying that you don't see color is effectively saying that you're non-racist. It might make you feel good inside to say that, but being a non-racist is not going to do anything to help combat the systematic racism that exists in our country. And friends, let's be clear. The tragedies that we're witnessing on a regular basis since 2020, starting with George Floyd, are not insulated incidents. This is a systemic problem. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd, to name a few, just happen to be the name of just a few of the black lives unjustly taken during this time. There have been and there will be others. That's how systemic problems work. So being non-racist is not enough. We must be anti-racist. Let's take a look at George Floyd's murder so you can get my point. Think about it for a moment. If Derek Chauvin, the police officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck for over 8 continuous minutes and who also had 18 prior complaints filed against him, if he represents systematic racism in America, then the 3 other police officers who stood by for those same 8+ minutes and allowed him to do that, they represent Americans who take the position of being non-racist. Stated differently, simply, they were indifferent. Because instead of being indifferent, the other officers should have acted affirmatively to combat the racism that was taking place in their very presence. In a word, they should have been anti-racist. And listen, friends, I understand it's hard work because the work of anti-racism requires that we see each other clearly in all of our beauty. In order to celebrate our differences in skin tone, in hair color, and texture, all of our differences, so that we can acknowledge and address inequalities, the injustices, and the violence that has been institutionalized and perpetuated based on the differences in our appearance. The work of anti-racism requires that we celebrate each other, that we celebrate our unique cultures and honor each other for the struggle and work that our individual communities have put in making strides towards changing our world, towards ridding our world of racism. And one of the places that you and I can start is with ourselves. Go home and do the work to dig deep into your subconscious and conscious thoughts and patterns for your biases and prejudices based on race. If you truly believe that you do not see color, then do the work to truly assess the reasons why. Root out your biases. Find the places where your own ignorance or misconception leads you to make assumptions, misleads your actions down paths you would rather not be on. Go back and think about where in your family history and your experiences have created roadblocks to making positive connections with people who look and are different than you, people of other cultures and ethnicities. Find those roadblocks and do the hard work to remove them. Friends, listen, we have to connect with each other now more than ever. And it's going to take every single one of us, no matter what color we are, to step forward and make a stand against racism. It's up to every single one of us to make sure our world is a more inclusive world, a world that recognizes and acknowledges color, but that does not make those differences the basis for exclusion, violence, and punitive action. It's up to you and up to me to not ignore the beautiful color and diversity that you see, but to acknowledge every person's right and fight for their humanity. It's up to you and me to end racism every day, in every one of our meetings, and every board meeting, at every table, in every institution. So my challenge to us is to take this awesome opportunity to recognize, embrace, and even celebrate our racial and ethnic differences as never before. Our world needs it. And perhaps God is calling us to repent for the times we have been less than understanding and compassionate towards one another, and to our black brothers and sisters in particular. Perhaps God is calling you and I to intentionally seek out those who look different than we do, and to listen carefully and non-judgmentally to their stories and experience. Perhaps God is calling us to a greater cultural and interpersonal awareness so that we can model the ministry and unconditional love of Jesus to everybody we come in contact. Perhaps God is calling us during this Black History Month in 2023 to be more intentional about seeing color. Because friends, when we see color, we actually see a small part of the character and creativity of God Himself. I do see color, and it's marvelous to behold.